Each time it starts the same way. A vulnerable woman, or a child, taken back to a small apartment in Osaka. An argument that ends in strangulation. Then plastic sheets on the floor, a saw, and a kitchen knife. The body is cut apart, piece by piece, and driven out of the city to quiet places where no one is watching. For years, no one connects it, until a middle-aged man is caught stealing from a clothing warehouse. Osaka, Japan. In April 1985, 19-year-old Midori Chinen walked away from a facility for people with intellectual disabilities in Tondabayashi. Since then, she has spent her days drifting around the Tsutenkaku area. Her path runs through Nishinari and Naniwa, poor marginal districts where cheap bars line the streets, and most people are too busy surviving to notice her. One afternoon, a 44-year-old man approaches her with a gentle voice and an offer of food. She agrees, and they go to a small sushi restaurant in Naniwa Ward. Afterwards, he brings her to his one-room apartment in Nishinari, where they have intercourse. When they are done, he hands her 10,000 yen. She tells him it is not enough. He takes this as an insult. His hands close around her throat, and within minutes, she is dead on the floor. He spreads plastic sheets and carpet scraps across the ground. With a saw and a kitchen knife, he cuts the body apart. Arms, legs, torso, head. The cutting takes time, the cleanup takes longer. When he is finished, he packs the remains into a large cardboard box. Before dawn, he loads the box into a rental car, drives out of Osaka and into Koryo, Nara Prefecture, and leaves it near a bamboo grove at the edge of a rural farm road. On June 17, 1985, a passerby opens the abandoned box and finds the cut-up remains of 19-year-old Midori Chinen. For 10 years, the case remains unsolved until a minor theft in Osaka links a suspect to the crime. April 10, 1995. In a clothing warehouse, a middle-aged man lifts a cardboard box filled with men's slacks and walks toward the exit. He looks like a customer, but there is no paperwork, no receipt, no delivery slip. A staff member stops him, checks the box, and realizes it is warehouse stock. Police are called, and he is taken into custody. Later that day, officers take his fingerprints and enter them into the system as routine. No one expects anything unusual. Then, a match appears. The print on file is not from a prior theft, but from an envelope sent 10 years earlier to Nara Prefecture. A letter about a woman in a cardboard box. In September 1985, that envelope had arrived at the Takata police station in Nara. Inside was a letter signed, "The Fiend with 22 Faces," echoing the "Monster with 21 Faces" group from the Glico Morinaga case a year earlier. The writer described taking a young woman to a sushi restaurant in Osaka's Naniwa Ward, sitting beside her, then strangling her, dismembering the body, and placing the parts in a cardboard box dumped by a rural road. Every detail matches the autopsy, including points never released to the public. The letter ends with a brief taunt, "Catch me if you can." Now, a man brought in for stealing a box of slacks is tied to a decade-old killing. Detectives pull old files from cabinets and lay crime scene photographs on the table. Different victims, different years, different prefectures. The same basic pattern: strangulation, dismemberment, disposal in remote wooded areas. They bring the suspect back into the interrogation room. His name is Yasutoshi Kamata, 54. Born on July 10, 1940, in Ozu City, Ehime Prefecture. Now living alone in a one-room apartment in Osaka. No steady employment. A familiar figure in nightlife districts, making money by selling cheap clothing to bar workers, some of it stolen. His record shows 2 theft convictions and a prison term that kept him off the streets until March 1993. On paper, he looks like a repeat petty thief. Investigators begin mapping his life against their open cases, the apartments he rented, the bars where he was known by name, the days he hired cars and drove out of Osaka. As the interviews continue, detectives steer their questions toward specific places. The bamboo grove in Koryo, the wooded roadside in Kobe, the cypress slopes above Mino, the forest roads of Toyono. By May 1995, after weeks of questioning, Kamata breaks. Confronted with the fingerprint match on the Fiend with 22 Faces letter, he admits writing it and confesses to killing 19-year-old Midori Chinen and soon to 4 other murders. The man the media will later call the Osaka Ripper steps into view. Night of May 28, 1985. This is the first victim we can trace to him. A 46-year-old woman named Higashi Fusai is working under a false name at a standing bar in Nishinari Ward. She pours drinks for regulars who know nothing about the life she left behind. Until 2 weeks earlier, she had been a housewife in Higashisumiyoshi Ward, living with her husband and 3 children. On May 14th, she walked out of that home and never returned. Now she works in a bar where no one asks questions. Regulars include men who drink until closing and women who work until dawn. One of them is Yasutoshi Kamata, who drifts through Osaka's lower districts selling cheap clothing. To the women behind the counter, he is just another customer, a man who buys drinks and does not cause trouble. That night, in the standing bar, they talk. At some point, he suggests leaving together. She agrees and follows him into the back streets of Nishinari to a one-room apartment rented by the day. Later, Kamata tells investigators he warned her about drinking too much. Whatever she said in response is not recorded. He becomes angry and strangles her. He lays down carpet scraps and vinyl sheets and takes a saw and a kitchen knife. Years earlier, he trained briefly as a cook, giving him a steady way of handling blades. Piece by piece, he dismembers her. He leaves her remains on a wooded roadside in Kobe City, then drives back to Osaka. Later, he admits he never even knew her real name. Thursday, 22nd January 1987. Around 5:30 p.m., 9-year-old Kumiko Tsujikado is walking home with her school bag after an abacus class. The route is routine, out of the classroom, along familiar residential streets, toward the family apartment. She does not arrive. Somewhere on that walk, she is approached by a middle-aged man, Yasutoshi Kamata. Japanese reports state that he stopped her on her way home and, under the pretense of needing directions, persuaded her to accompany him to his apartment. There is no recorded struggle in the street, and no witnesses report hearing screams. Later, Kamata tells investigators that he tried to play with her, and she began to cry. Worried that his actions will be exposed, he decides to silence her. He strangles her in the room. Unlike his adult victims, he does not dismember her. He later explains that, because she was small, he could move the body without cutting it. He places her in a vehicle and drives out of the city toward the northern edge of Osaka Prefecture, into the mountains near Toyono town. There, in a forested area under cypress and cedar, he leaves the body and returns to Osaka. By that night, Kumiko's family notices she has not come home. A missing child report is filed the next day. Police and school staff begin a search. Kamata then makes 5 telephone calls, both to the family home and to Sumi Elementary School. He claims to have Kumiko, demands 30 million yen, and instructs them not to involve police, unaware that investigators are already active. The calls are recorded. No concrete arrangement for a ransom exchange is ever set. After the 5th call, the line goes quiet. On the 4th of May 1987, searchers locate human remains in the Toyono Mountains. They are identified as those of Kumiko Tsujikado. The case is recorded as a homicide. Kamata grew up in Ozu, Ehime Prefecture, where his family ran a small business supplying disposable chopsticks to hotels and restaurants. After his father died, he dropped out during his 2nd year of high school and drifted through a series of short-term jobs. Through the 1970s and early 1980s, he worked in places such as a sock factory in Yamato Takada, Nara Prefecture, but never stayed long enough to build a stable career. He married, had a son and a daughter, and later lost his wife. After her death, he left Ehime and eventually settled in Osaka, where he remarried a woman who also worked in a bar. That second marriage collapsed within months amid violent arguments in a small Nishinari apartment. From then on, he lived mainly in Osaka's poorer districts, moving through small apartments, living out of a few bags, and making money by stealing clothing and reselling it cheaply in bars. He was convicted of theft twice and spent several years in prison. During those years, the killings stopped. When he is released in March 1993, he is almost 53. He steps out of prison and returns to the same districts he knew before. Spring 1993. Kamata rents a small apartment in the Nishinari Naniwa area and returns to his routine, moving through nightlife districts, selling clothing of unclear origin, drinking quietly in bars where no one asks about his past. By July 1993, his earlier pattern of violence resumes. One of his regular customers, 45-year-old snack bar hostess Kazue Suda, agrees to visit his apartment. She knows him as a familiar clothing seller who speaks softly. Inside the room, an argument over money develops. The dispute escalates. Kamata strangles her. He lays down vinyl and carpet, uses the same tools, a saw and a kitchen knife, dismembers the body, wraps the remains, and transports them by car. This time, he drives north to the wooded outskirts of Mino City, in the Kamitodoromi area, near the forested slopes along Osaka Prefectural Route 4. There, he disposes of the remains on steep wooded terrain. For months, they are not found. By early 1994, he is again changing apartments, selling clothes, and drinking in central Osaka. Another regular buyer, 38-year-old bar worker Kumiko Nakano from Chuo Ward, also visits his apartment in late March 1994. As with Suda, a dispute over money occurs, followed by a sudden escalation. He strangles Nakano, dismembers her using the same method, and steals some of her clothing to resell. He then returns to the same disposal area in Kamitodoromi and leaves her remains there. On April 4, 1994, searchers and police discover human remains on a slope in a cypress forest along Route 4 in Mino. As the search area is widened, a second set of skeletal remains is found approximately 150 meters away. Weather and animals have scattered the bones, but forensic examination and dental records identify the victims as Kazue Suda and Kumiko Nakano. With no identified suspect and no clear connection established to earlier crimes, investigators can only conclude that the northern Osaka mountains have been used as a dumping site. The cases remain unsolved at that time. When the case finally reaches court, the outcome is clear. Kamata is charged with 5 murders: Higashi Fusai, Midori Chinen, Kumiko Tsujikado, Kazue Suda, and Kumiko Nakano. In court, he retracts his confessions and blames a fabricated acquaintance for some of the crimes, but the judges dismiss the story. Forensic links, the fingerprint on the Fiend with 22 Faces letter, rental car records, and his own earlier statements form a chain of evidence that holds. The Osaka District Court rules that the killings were deliberate, repeated, and extremely violent. It sentences him to death by hanging. Kamata appeals to the Osaka High Court. The appeal is rejected. He takes the case to the Supreme Court. That appeal is also rejected. By 2005, the death sentence is final. No remaining appeals, no possibility of parole. For more than 10 years, he remains on death row in the Osaka detention house, aging, quiet, largely invisible to the public. On March 25, 2016, at the age of 75, Yasutoshi Kamata is executed by hanging.